Hi everyone, it's Joanne here at Apple Tree Studio. Just wondering how you all are. Hope you're all self-isolating and keeping yourself and your loved ones nice and safe. Another little freebie today. I thought I'd cheer you all up, you artists out there, and paint some nice juicy red tulips to remind us that spring is just around the corner. I have been asked what I do watercolour, and what I wanted to do today is to do something a bit different. So I'm using these Hydrus Dr. Martens watercolours. I'm really liking them. As you can see, they've got a little pipette, so you can squeeze your paint into your palette. I'm using the carmine red, the yellow medium and the cobalt blue. Just because you don't have these doesn't mean you can't have a play around with me today, because you can use watercolour. I'm just using 3 primers, aren't I? A red, a yellow and a blue. Got my little squirty bottle in case I need it, lots of clean water. Size 8 brush is a Kolinsky Sable Isaby and a little bit of wax resist, I think. So you can see that obviously I've drawn out my tulips onto my paper. I'm using, by the way, a Saunders Waterford paper, which is just my favourite paper in the whole world. It's going to give us a nice texture, and it absolutely loves watercolour, and it certainly does love these inks as well. So, okay, so drawing down, you can copy yours off a photograph that you've got, you can copy mine. I'm only putting 3 in, let's keep things nice and simple. A little bit of wax resist now, let's catch some highlights on our tulips. And I'm thinking about the light kind of coming from this right hand side. So let's just put a few little marks in there that are going to help to suggest that. Maybe a few little marks down the side of the stems and the leaves. It's like anything else, this, you know, it's a little gimmick, isn't it? Don't overdo it. Remember, when you put the wax down, it ain't coming off again. So be selective in your mark making, don't press too heavy. And you can always jazz it up with a little bit of white acrylic if you make a mess at the end, but I don't think you will. Okay, we'll start off. I've not clipped it down, by the way, this paper, because I want to kind of move it around a bit as well. Let's start off by wetting the flower shapes. Now, at this point, you could actually turn your picture upside down. Just using that flat of the brush just to push that water into the surface of that paper. Like so. Okay. Now, let's really make ourselves jump out of our seats and be quite bold with the colour. So let's put some yellows in there. Ooh, beautiful. Let's clean the brush. Lots of clean water, cleaning the brush into that nice red. And let's allow that red to kind of blend into the yellow. For me, there's nothing more exciting than watching colour mixed together like that. Now, don't worry, you can see here that I'm obviously not keeping to the lines. I don't mind if I say I splatter or it comes out of those lines, that's fine. I'm going to get a little bit of kitchen roll and I'm just going to pop it on top. I don't want to lift all that paint away, just some of it. You can see it's soaking into the paper. Let's move that. Let's get our little bottle and give it a bit of a spritz. I'll tip the paper up as well, just allowing that colour to escape. There we go. So, that's better. So, okay, nice and wet. There's not a lot we can do at the moment because it is wet. You can kind of tip it about a little bit, move your colour around. But at this point, we really need to kind of let this dry and start to work on the greens. So when it's dry, you should hopefully have something like this. And you can see that obviously I've got little back runs going on here and lots of kind of happy accidents. But let's not dwell on the things we don't like. Let's plow on, because sometimes the thing that really irritates you and you don't like usually ends up being the best part of your picture. So try not to stress. Let's mix the green. Let's mix it on the paper. So we'll take some of the yellow I'm just going to pull that shape down like that. And another one here. And another one here. Again, don't worry about keeping the lines. It doesn't matter. Let's just drop in some of the blue while this is still wet. And this is where things get interesting, because you're allowing that colour to mix on the paper, which is always much nicer than in the palette. Do the same with the leaves now, can't we? So I can see a leaf shape kind of coming up here. Kind of comes behind this flower a little bit, doesn't it? Oh, nice and yellow. Drop in some of the blues. Plenty of water on your brush. If you feel you've been too heavy in one part, like a little bit heavy here, you can always lift a little bit away. The more water you put on this, the better. Okay, there's another one just kind of coming up like that, so we'll bob that one in. There's another one coming up here. Again, if you've been too heavy, just lift a bit off. It's all right. And I like this one, it's coming around here like that. Well, my blue's jumped into my yellow now, so I'm having a bit of a problem mixing that on the paper because it's already mixed. Be careful here, I want that to look as though it's coming behind. Okay. Now again, we're in a position really where we really should let this dry. But actually, while it's still wet, we can work on these 3 tulips a little bit more. So what we can do is we can start to add a few darks. So here I'm just taking the red on its own. We're thinking about the light coming from this right hand side. So we know that the centre, that's not quite dry. That's me being impatient. And the bottom half's nice and dark as well. The sort of tulip, it usually is the darkest part. Again, that swishing sound you can hear me making, that's me furiously rubbing my, cleaning my brush into the water. So do another one. Okay, this one looks a bit dry, it is. So we'll take some dark here, some dark underneath. Again, lots and lots of clean water, because what we're doing now is we're softening those shapes off, allowing them to blend into the water. Kind of naturally. There we go. Oh, lovely. I feel a splatter coming on. There we go. I'm going to have to be a little bit careful here because this one is still wet, but we can kind of put the scent a bit in. I mean, you might be as more patient than I am, and yours hopefully is dry and you're not taking these risks. Okay. Lots of water. A little bit more red there. Oh, they're looking a bit delicious, aren't they? We all need someone on our shoulder telling us to put the brush down. So at this point, yeah, I think it's probably wise if we let this dry and really start to build up the final tonal details. I've got myself some nice clean water as well while this has been drying, because it was getting pretty mucky, and I do like to have a lot of clean water, and I'm using quite a big jug as well, and it's amazing how dirty that gets. So if you're only using a little pot, then you really need to be changing your water quite often. Clean water, clean washes basically. Okay, so this is what we have so far. You probably noticed actually I'm not using a reference photograph. I'm just kind of making it up as I go along. And that's the fun bit about painting, isn't it? There's no pressure on me now. I can just play around with patterns and shapes, and I'm not being dictated to by a photograph. Let's first think about how we can make some sense here of the leaves and the stems. And really all I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of the blue into the green, so I'm making kind of a greeny blue colour. Remember when we first started and we talked about light coming in this direction, so let's show off that lovely stem here. Can you see it coming from this flower? Softening away. Let's soften it all the way down, I think that. So now we get to see that lovely stem. Let's find another one. Okay, here's the stem coming down here, so I'm going to darken this shape. Bags of water. So now that becomes a bit more obvious, doesn't it? Ooh, any more? Any more? You can just do it here as well. We've got a stem here, so there's nothing stopping you coming in with some greens or blues to show that off. It's your picture. You can put them wherever you like. It's getting a little bit more interesting now, isn't it? You start to see things, things start to appear. Obviously, I'm quite aware of overworking an area like this. So, to stop myself from working on it anymore, I'm going to take the little spray bottle and I'm just going to give it a bit of a spritz, and can you see what happens? You might need to zoom in, but spritzing the water into that wet water has given us this lovely texture. And sometimes I'll keep waiting for it to dry a little bit more and spritz again and again and again, but you get very bored with me doing that. Hopefully we can go back to these now. A little bit more kind of substance to these flowers now. So now I'm using just the red on its own, no yellow. And we're going to start to put in, say, some darker centres. Following the petal shape here. Lots of water. Just rolling my brush around into that wash to create the softness and looseness of the wash. There you go. Should we do another one? You see, there's a lot of water on there, by the way. Do another one. The green ran into that. I quite like it, but I think we'll eventually lose it when we go over that with our second red. Oh, okay, petal, dark underneath, maybe a smidge there as well. When I'm talking to you, actually, this is the noise that's going on in my head, so I'm kind of sharing with you. Okay, might come back to that one, do a little bit more. Just soften that away a bit. And let's put a darker centre into this one. Petals. We're not painting the petal, we're kind of painting around it, aren't we? You know, don't just use the tip of your brush as well. You know, the belly, this part of your brush is so important. Ooh. A lot of water on that. We'll just pull that away a bit. They really are starting to look a bit scrummy now, aren't they? I like the hint of yellow on this one. There isn't much on that one. And I think I just like a touch of it into this bottom one. So, nice clean brush, and I'm just going to sweep that in. Oh, go on then. A little bit on there as well. Just to give it that extra dimension, really. The yellow really helps. We're at that point again where we really need to dry. To be honest with you, there isn't a great deal I can do here now. I think just a little bit of tidying up. I mean, I'm like anyone else, you know, I never know when to stop. And having that self-discipline is not easy. So, for the sake of me filming all afternoon and this being a disaster, I will stop now, let it dry, and let's just see if we can add any little details, then we can call it finished. Well, I did film the last 5 minutes of adding a few details and my phone didn't work. So obviously not happy, but really you only missed the few details, the final details that I put in. So I'll just talk you through them. You can see how messy my workstation is now. Water, very dirty. I've decided that the top half was very red and the bottom half was very green. So what I've done here is, you can see these little splatters. I've splattered some red paint into that area just to kind of give it a colour balance. I've added just a few more touches of these negative shapes using the blue. A little bit more spraying. And as you can see, the paint is still wet. But all those unhappy accidents that we had at the beginning actually seem to work quite well now. And there you go. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you have a go. Let me see what you do. I'd love to see what you're doing. Most of all, keep safe, keep your loved ones safe, and be kind.